When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
If you feel inclined to start conspiracy theories based on this book, get on with your bad self. You're just giving Dan fodder for his TikToks.
It's just job security at this point.
That's right. That's right. You should be embracing this, Dan. I don't know why you're fighting it.
I don't know why you did this to me. Hey, everybody. I'm Dan McClellan.
And I'm Dan Beecher.
And you are listening to the Data Over Dogma podcast, where we increase public access to the academic study of the Bible and religion, and we combat the spread of misinformation about the same.
Sure do.
Sure do. Indeedly do. And how goes the thing?
Stuff's
Dan?
good, man. I'm stoked. This week, you and I, Dan, are going to be talking about a thing that you have mentioned many times on this show. Mm-hmm. You've even maybe explained to me what it is, and it's
Multiple
never
times.
really sunk in. I don't get it. I don't know why. Yeah, so I am very excited to have all of this cleared up. We're going to be talking about a book that has been shunted aside, that has been left out of the canon, and we're going to call this segment Left Behind.
Dum, dum, dum. Not to be confused with the book series that has been probably, I think, like one of the most successful book series of the history of books. No, this is a series all about texts that were considered authoritative, historical, important at some time or another, but for whatever reason were left out of the canon. And today, it's a big one. It's First Enoch. The first book of Enoch, the book of Enoch, if you will, and something.
You do. It's funny that the first book of Enoch and Enoch can be used interchangeably, because you would think that if there's multiple books of Enoch, you have to say the first thing, but you kind of don't, right?
So it's not like 1st and 2nd Corinthians or 1st and 2nd Samuel, where they're written by the same authors and they are consecutive. The one follows after the other. You do have a 1st, a 2nd, and a 3rd Enoch, and then other pretenders, but they're written in vastly different time periods. And really, when people are talking about the book of Enoch, they're talking about 1st Enoch. Right. When somebody wants to refer to 2nd Enoch or 3rd Enoch, they're going to say 2nd or 3rd Enoch, if they know what they're talking about. But this is a phenomenally influential piece of pseudepigrapha, which means false writing, which means it's something that was attributed to some towering figure from Jewish or Christian history that was very clearly not written by that person.
Which is funny, because I think a lot of people might consider that reason enough to dismiss it from the canon of the Bible, but plenty of Bible books that are part of the canon are pseudepigrapha as well.
Exactly. And additionally, some of the texts that are in the Bible considered Enoch to be authoritative and historical. Okay. For instance, the Epistle of Jude that we find in the New Testament directly quotes from First Enoch. And it says, Enoch, the 7th from Adam, said, and then directly quotes a passage from First Enoch. And so at least the author of the Epistle of Jude considered it to be authoritative, considered it to be historical, but it fell out of favor a couple centuries after that. And we're going to talk about how that happened, I think, toward the end of the show. But I wanted to start by talking about where this text comes from, and then go through a brief outline of the text, and then we'll talk about how we came about discovering it and all that kind of stuff.
So by where it comes from, you mean it comes from the seventh descendant of Adam, right?
Well, this was one of the concerns with some of the early Christians who were, as a concern for what was canonical and what was not, began to grow. This book purports to come from before the flood. And so actual manuscripts of this book would have been preserved since before the flood. But Enoch is mentioned. And I think we have Enoch in both the genealogy in Genesis 4 and the genealogy in Genesis 5, because in Genesis 4... You
mean the person Enoch, not the book.
Correct, the person Enoch. Let's just lay the canonical foundation first.
Right.
In Genesis 4, we have in verse 15, the Lord set a mark upon Cain lest... Oh, that's the KJV. I don't want to read that crap.
You almost made a cardinal mistake, a cardinal sin.
I'm being facetious, everybody. Yeah. In Genesis 4:15, Adonai put a mark on Cain so that no one who came upon him would kill him. Then Cain went away from the presence of Adonai and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. And again, in Genesis 4, this narrative is not written from a perspective that understands Adam and Eve and their children to be the only people on earth. Genesis 4 is written from the perspective of the earth is already populated.
Right.
And then in verse 17, Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. And he built a city and named it Enoch, after his son Enoch.
Wait, after his son Enoch.
No, I think Cain built a city.
Okay.
And named it Enoch after his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad was the father of Mehujael, and Mehujael the father of Methushael, and Methushael the father of Lamech. And then Lamech, we get Ada and Zillah, and blah, blah, blah. And we go on. And then in Genesis, and we talked a bit about these genealogies a long, long time ago, how these are two different genealogies, and we tend to try to conflate them. And so if we go to Genesis 5, we get Adam bore Seth, Seth bore Enosh, Enosh bore Kenan, Kenan bore Ivory Wayans, and Kenan, where we go, bore Mahalalel, Mahalalel bore Jared, Jared bore Enoch. And then,
wow, that is a very different, well, it could just be a different Enoch.
And that's the rationalization. But this is the idea of the seventh from Adam.
Right.
So it's not Cain's line, it's Seth's line, because this is the more righteous line. And then Enoch became the father of Methuselah. And so Methuselah was the longest living of the patriarchs, according to the book of Genesis. And then in Genesis 5:22, it says, Enoch walked with God after the birth of Methuselah 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Thus all the days of Enoch were 365 years. Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more because God took him. And the Hebrew is lakach, which is the verbal root that means to take. Ki lakachoto. Elohim, because God took him. So Enoch is one of the patriarchs who doesn't die.
So that wording is unusual. That wording is not used for people that, like, you know, when we say God took grandma, we mean that she just died.
Right. Here it is. It doesn't seem to indicate that, and the tradition is that this is someone who was snatched up,
right,
in some way, and it doesn't say this about anybody else.
Okay,
so we're dealing with somebody who's supposed to come from very early in the primeval history,
and he lived fewer than 400 years, which for that time among these patriarchs, that's actually paltry. He must have gotten in a car accident or something, because
something like that.
His son lived 960 some odd years. So,
and it says 365 years, which would be a year of years.
Yeah.
Basically.
Oh yeah. Sure.
So, and we talked about the significance of some of these numbers in that episode, which was, oh gosh, I forget the name of the episode. But if anybody wants to go check it out, it was I knew a man who was so old.
Yeah, something.
Is that the name of the episode? So anyway. the book of Enoch is purporting to tell a story from the perspective of Enoch. And scholars agree that the earliest layer of it came together over a long period of time. The earliest portions of it probably date to around 300 BCE, and probably originally written in Aramaic, and then later translated into Greek. But the earliest portions are coming from the beginning of the Hellenistic period. So Alexander the Great has already conquered everything and then drank himself to death. And so now we have the diadochi, the wars of succession afterwards, and Greek is becoming the lingua franca. And we're also starting to see the influence of Greek literature, Greek myth, and Greek philosophy on things. But we lay our scene around 300 BCE, and the latest part of the book of Enoch, the very last chapter, which is called the final book of Enoch, chapter 108, was probably written around the time of some of the New Testament, toward the end of the 1st century CE.
Oh, wow.
And so it's coming together over the course of several centuries, but in pretty large chunks, although portions of it, scholars think, have been edited and redacted as it's coming together.
I would hope so. If you've got 300 years, you better get some edits done.
Yeah, but we've got 7 different scholars generally divided into 5 to 7 different segments, and the first segment is known as the Book of Watchers, and this is a reference to the angels who descended from heaven as the Watchers. And one thing I should probably make clear that I should have made clear earlier: this is basically taking the story from Genesis 6. Regarding the B'nai Elohim, the children of God, who come down and they have children with human women, and those children are, the warrior, the mighty men of old, and there were Nephilim in the earth in those days and afterwards as well. So we got that story, and Enoch is basically taking that and then just blowing it up into 108 chapters, where we're talking about what happened, why it happened, what was the outcome. And it's basically trying to account. This
is fan fiction, is what we're talking about.
It's fanfic, yeah, and with just as much sex. And
nice.
But it's looking down on it, not as in from above, but as in it is
it condemns,
disapproving of it. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And so
this isn't 50 Shades of Enoch.
No.
Okay.
There's no Mr. Gray. But what happens is it is using this as a lens for contemplating the problem of evil. Where does evil come from? Well, it comes from these angels who make this decision. In fact, they make a pact, a covenant, to go descend to earth, and they end up coming down, hundreds of them, on Mount Hermon, and then everything goes from there. And that story is told a couple times over. And then it explains that these angels, they taught humanity about weapons of war. In fact, go in a little bit into the Book of Watchers. The first few chapters are an intro, and then chapters 6 through 11 retell Genesis 6 through 9. So starting with these angels. And in Genesis 6, they're B'nai Elohim, they're gods, children of gods, they're gods. They get renegotiated. The pantheon gets reduced, gets renegotiated, and they become angels. And in chapter 6 through 11, Asael is the head malevolent angel. Now, this head malevolent angel is going to later turn into what the New Testament knows as Satan. So, but in the Book of Enoch, they go by different names. And at least at the beginning, it's Asael is the head angel. And then chapters 12 through 16 reinterpret chapters 6 through 11. So basically, we tell the story in 6 through 11. 12 through 16, we're like, hang on, I'm going to tell that again. And they tell it all over again.
Which never happens in old texts, in ancient texts.
And so now we have evil spirits in the Greco-Roman world. And so the Watchers, when they die, their spirits leave their corpses and become the evil spirits that possess people, that compel people to do bad things. Now, in chapters 17 through 32, we get a bit of a travel log here's where Enoch is being taken on this tour of this eschatological tour, where an angel is acting as Enoch's psychopomp. We've used that word before on the show.
But define it again. No, don't define it. You'll kill me if I say that. But what are we talking? What's a psychopomp again?
Psychopomp is like the angelic or divine guide that explains what the eschatological visions mean and represent and all that kind of stuff.
It's the dragon in Mulan.
something like that. Now I'm Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah,
to
there
some
you
degree,
go.
could be represented that way. There are some, there are other examples. But anyway.
Every Disney movie's got a psychopomp.
But Enoch is shown a bunch of weird places. And he's kind of like, Spirit, what does this mean? He's shown all these smooth places. 3 smooth places. And one of them is the place where these are the souls of the righteous, and they're waiting upon judgment. And these are the souls of the sinners who did not receive judgment during their life, and they're going to go on to another place. And then there's another smooth place where these are the souls of the sinners who did not, or who did receive judgment in life. So he's basically seeing the post-mortem divine punishment and reward that is going to be set up for people, as well as for these wicked angels.
What does smooth mean in this case?
It just says smooth.
No idea. Okay.
Yeah, it's just like, it's not a rocky terrain. It's just like a big bowl, and everybody's just hanging out in the bowl.
It's just got people in their smooth place waiting to go to hell or whatever.
And but the angels, the wicked angels, are also to be punished. And Enoch witnesses Asael being commanded, or not Asael, but Raphael being commanded to go bind the 4 head angels and throw them into darkness and put them in, put jagged rocks underneath them and throw them into this cursed valley and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of this imagery, whether it's they're going to be in a fiery place, or they're going to be in a smooth place, or they're going to be in a dark place, or they're going to be covered in jagged rocks. Like, this imagery gets picked up in imagery about hell as these concepts further develop. So Enoch is where we get a lot of the imagery that gets picked up in the New Testament related to hell. And then books 33 through 36 summarize parts of the book of luminaries, and we're going to talk a little bit about those a little later on. The next book, though, is the book of parables. I guess I should just list all the books in the 7.
Sure.
So George Nicholsburg and James Vanderkam are scholars who wrote the 2 volumes of the Hermeneia commentary on the Book of Enoch. And if you want a very detailed, very technical discussion, I would highly recommend that. But they divided into the Book of Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Book of Luminaries, the Dream Visions, the Epistle of Enoch, the Birth of Noah, and then the final book of Enoch. So we talked a little bit about the Watchers. In the Book of Parables, we've got a series of journeys again. We have similar structure to the Book of Watchers, where we have all these wicked angels who have covenanted to come down, and they're going to teach evil things to humanity. And by the way, one of the evil things that the angels teach to humanity is eyeshadow.
Oh, really?
Yes. So when you go into I believe it's chapter 8. Okay. Yeah, chapter 8. Asael taught men to make swords of iron, and weapons and shields and breastplates and every instrument of war. He showed them metals of the earth and how they should work gold to fashion it suitably, and concerning silver to fashion it for bracelets and ornaments for women. Satan created jewelry.
Okay.
And he showed them concerning antimony and eye paint and all manner of precious stones and dyes.
Skun-dun-dun.
And the sons of men made them for themselves and for their daughters, and they transgressed and led the holy ones astray.
That's just so weird. What do you people have against looking pretty? I like a bit of good fashion. I enjoy a bit of a nice shirt every now and then, a nice piece of jewelry. Who knows? I just think that's a very funny thing. But apparently, it's from those evil scamps.
Yeah,
the angels.
Yeah, and so in one of the first parables, I think there are two main parables, but the unrighteousness that was let loose on the world by the watchers drove wisdom back to heaven. So wisdom is personified as one of the works of God, and wisdom is like, this party's dead, I'm out, and goes back to heaven. And then
they're all wearing eye paint. I'm out of here.
Yeah, The Data Over Dogma podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Hey everybody, it's June. We're halfway through the year. Hope you've been having a good year. Hope you've had some great experiences and you've got stuff to look forward to. And I hope you don't have too much stress holding you down.
Yeah, but if you do, BetterHelp can be very helpful. I don't know if you out there have tried therapy, but for me, it has been a super useful tool in my life. I went through some pretty severe depression when the pandemic hit and really needed some help with it. And therapy, for me, turned out to be a very, very important step in the right direction. With the help of my therapist, I was able to pinpoint some of the causes of my depression and work through them together with my therapist. And it's something that I find tremendously useful.
I've found therapy tremendously helpful myself since the pandemic. I had never considered it an option before that, but I know some people who have suffered quite a bit of depression because of and since the pandemic, and I was in that boat to some degree. And it has helped immensely just to be able to talk about these things in an open environment. If you are thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online. It's intended to be convenient and flexible, suited to your schedule. You can even change therapists without any charge or penalty of any kind. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist and go from there.
Take a moment. Visit BetterHelp.com/dogma today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/dogma.
Hey there, I'm Dylan Lewis, one of the hosts of Motley Fool Money. Each weekday on Motley Fool Money, we talk through the business news you need to know and the stories moving stocks on Wall Street. On weekends, we dive into the industries shaping tomorrow and host the experts, authors, and executives that understand them. Tune in for insights, a long-term perspective on investing, and of course, stock ideas. Plenty of them. To quote a listener, it pays to listen. Check us out and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
We also have visions related to Daniel. We talk about the Son of Man. We talk about wisdom. We're pulling from the book of Isaiah some of the frameworks. We see a great judgment. The flood is kind of the outcome of the great judgment. So the deluge, Noah's flood, is interpreted as God's judgment on the angels and humanity, which, decided they were just going to get fully out of pocket and wear eyeshadow. Mm-hmm. And then Enoch is taken from the earth. Enoch summarizes his ascent to heaven and presentation as the Son of Man. Now, we've talked about this Son of Man title before because Jesus picks up the Son of Man title in the New Testament. And this is in Daniel, the apocalyptic parts of Daniel, where Daniel sees the Son of Man coming to the Ancient of Days. And this is kind of this mediator figure of some kind who, in at least the one version in the Old Greek, it says the Son of Man came to the Ancient of Days. Well, that preposition is altered by one letter so that it says in one version of the Old Greek, the Son of Man came as the Ancient of Days. And suddenly it's like, oh, the Son of Man is the Ancient of Days? What's going on here? So we have this mediator figure who their identity is kind of blurred with the identity of God. But Enoch is identified with this character, at least in this part of Book of Parables. And then we get the Book of Luminaries, which has to do, this is basically about the calendar and about celestial bodies. So we talked previously when we were talking about the flat earth, I mentioned that in Enoch, you got this part where he's like, so like in the firmament on the east, there are 3 holes. and the sun comes out of the hole and follows the track, and then goes in the west. It leaves the firmament through another hole, and
this was the cuckoo clock part of the of the firmament theology.
Yeah. So just like in the ride Pirates of the Caribbean, where you see the people who are on a track come out, I think it's a woman with like a rolling pin chasing one of the pirates or something like that.
Or the glockenspiel if you want to get if you want to get
you're nasty.
Sure, fun about it.
if you want to get Teutonic about things. But Enoch is with another angel Uriel, who reveals details of the calendar and the 4 ruling luminaries. So we got a 364-day year that is laid out here. That's the solar year, or 364-day solar year. And then we also have a 354-day lunar year. Oh. So we've got 2 different years.
Yeah.
And it's divided up into 12 months of exactly 30 days for each month. And then we have extra days in the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th month, adding up to 364 days in the year. And then the 354-day lunar year, that divides into 12. Okay. Sun moves through 6 gates in the east, starts in the east, settles in the west. Not to intentionally quote the great poet, that is the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But and then there's a part about the luminaries kind of breaking down. I've been on the Pirates of the Caribbean when it has broken down. And
we have all been on the Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah. If you've been on the Pirates of the Caribbean.
But did they walk you outside to the back lot where you had to walk around?
No.
Oh, yeah.
I just had to sit and wait for 45 minutes and then finally go again.
They turned all the lights on and they were like, everybody up. And we had to go like across a catwalk above the thing and then out to some back lot. And it was like a bunch of the boats were like turned over and just sitting in this back lot.
How dare they? They've broken the magic.
Yeah.
The magic is broken.
I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. I need a churro. But there's a part where things seem to malfunction. And this is in chapter 80. And some scholars think this is like a later interpolation because the whole point of this book is everything works perfectly. Nothing breaks down. But that's also the only eschatological part of that book. So the point is, things are breaking down. It's all coming to an end. Luckily, that's not what happened when we had to leave the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. But
that wasn't particularly eschatological.
No. Okay. I mean, coming outside to the bright sunshine of
it can feel like the
of
end
Orange
of the world.
County, California. Yeah, it was a little jarring. Okay, and then we move on to the dream visions, which are chapters 83 through 90. And we have two main visions here. One has to do with the flood. The other has to do with what's called the animal apocalypse. And that's the cool one, because that's basically retelling the same story all over again about the angels and everything, only now everybody's animals. So, yeah. And this starts in... The one part that I think is cool is... not the one part, but the main part that I think is cool. It's chapter 86. Oh, and by the way, if you want a good translation, you can find all kinds of cheap translations of First Enoch. Most of them are from the 19th century or are garbage. Okay. But I mentioned Nicholsburg and Vanderkam. They part of their commentary was a translation, and so they took the translation and just published it separately. This is like $14.
Okay.
So First Enoch, the Hermenea translation, good deal, and that's the most academic translation that's available today.
Because this isn't going to be found in, like, if you buy a copy of the NRSV or whatever.
No,
you're not gonna find
this is not a part of the Apocrypha. But we'll get to the whole canon issue in a bit.
Okay.
So First Enoch 86:1. This is Enoch talking. And again, I saw with my eyes as I was sleeping. I saw the heaven above, and look, a star fell from heaven, and it arose and was eating and pasturing among the cattle.
Wow, I did not see that coming for a fallen star.
Then I saw those large and black cattle, and look, all of them exchanged their pens and their pastures and their calves, and they began to moan one after the other. And again I saw in the vision, and I looked to heaven, and look, I saw many stars descend and cast themselves down from heaven to that first star. And in the midst of those calves, they became bulls, and they were pasturing with them in their midst. And so we've got calves and we've got bulls starting off. And
I am so confused about what you just read.
This is the head angel. So Asael in 1 Enoch 6. Elsewhere they're referred to as Shemi-Hazah. If you've seen Darren Aronofsky's Noah, I just appeared on a podcast called Escape Hatch where we talked all about this, and they are actually basing a lot of that on First Enoch and the story of the Watchers. So Semyaza is the name there. Azazel is another name for the head angel. So they got a few different names, but that head angel is a falling star. And then if you go look in the book of Revelation, it says, I saw the great dragon fall from heaven like a star, and then with their tail, they swept with them a third of the stars of heaven, which also fell to earth with them. So book of Revelation is drawing directly from what we're seeing in the book of Enoch, where the head malevolent angel falls, and then all the other angels go tagging along after.
Do they also become cows in Revelation?
So Adam through Noah are all represented as bulls in the animal apocalypse. And then Ham and...
It feels like there's going to be another section that's going to be the Veggie Tales. But okay. Now all of the patriarchs are cattle.
Well, up through Noah. Because Noah survives the flood, but Noah had 3 sons, according to the tradition, Ham, Japheth, and Shem.
Yeah.
Ham and Japheth, their offspring are all kinds of different animals and birds.
Oh, wow.
Shem is the only one whose offspring are all bulls. So now we start to notice a theme. The Semites, the fathers of the people of Israel, are staying in that lane of bulls. But Ham and Japheth, because they deviated, they're all different kinds of animals.
Okay.
And then we go all the way down to Isaac, and then Isaac produces a wild boar.
Okay.
And this is Esau. And then Isaac produces sheep, a sheep, and this is Jacob. And then Jacob has all of Jacob's 12 offspring are all sheep. And so this is the 12 tribes of Israel, and so they're sheep. And sometimes they go astray, sometimes they're blinded, sometimes they're killed by wild beasts. And so the wild beasts are obviously all of the offspring of the children of Ham and Japheth. In other words, these are the Gentiles. So the Gentiles are causing problems. And this is kind of political commentary, because they're in a period after Alexander the Great has died. You got the Seleucid Empire, you got the Ptolemies, they're fighting over this land, and the Judeans are stuck in the middle of it, and they're getting the short end of the stick, and they're being oppressed heavily. And this vision is probably written during the Maccabean period, when Antiochus IV Epiphanes was pushing hard on the Judeans, trying to stamp out Judean traditions. Things like circumcision, things like whatever they were using to try to, as identity markers, he's trying to stamp them out.
Right.
So the animal apocalypse is all about this, and then it's all going to come to a head right around the same time that Antiochus IV Epiphanes is hopefully going to be defeated. So it's very similar to the book of Daniel in that regard. Unfortunately, things don't work out that well.
Other than... Like it's the same as Daniel, other than the fact that everyone in Daniel stays people.
Yeah. It's got to have a hook. Somehow it's got to have a hook.
Right?
So you can imagine these people sitting around a table. What if it was Daniel, but animals,
but critters?
Yeah.
Somebody called Julie Taymor or whoever did the Lion King musical. We need to do a version of this.
And then the next book is the Epistle of Enoch, from chapters 91 to 105. And this is Enoch warning his sons, writing these epistles as, the epistolary warning to your offspring, as, that old canard.
If you haven't written an epistle to your offspring yet, warning them of whatever, get on that.
And it's primarily being written to Methuselah. And here we have another apocalyptic text, only this is called the Apocalypse of Weeks. And this is where we have 10 periods, like the whole existence is divided into 10 periods of weeks. So this is sounding kind of like Daniel, and also sounding kind of like different kinds of apocalyptic imaginings that, there are 6,000 years, and so there are 6 dispensations and all that kind of stuff. Only here, the weeks are not all of the same length of time. So there's a bit of an accordion thing going on.
Those
here.
are less useful weeks. When you don't know when you don't know how long a week's going to end up being, it's hard to rely on that. I'll see you in a week doesn't necessarily. I mean, I have friends for whom I'll see you in a week can mean anything from tomorrow to 6 months from now. So I guess it makes sense.
I mean, put it in the dictionary, because that's
right.
A couple of days used to mean 2 days. Now it's like a week or two.
Yeah. Who knows?
At least from an academic point of view, that's how we communicate. And then in the epistle, we have 2 sets of woes. One of them is woeing or lamenting, idolatry, consuming blood, blasphemy, cursing, perverting or disregarding the divine law.
Whoa.
Woe indeed. The second woe is woeing, rich and powerful, abusing the righteous, big houses, banqueting in luxury, hoarding food and wealth, and wearing expensive clothing and jewelry, and also lying.
This is why Bezos and his ilk have really gotten tried to get Enoch out of everything.
Yeah. So, but this is interesting because dividing it into 2 is kind of similar to later ideas that we see about the 2 great commandments: love God and love your neighbor. And these 2 woes happen to do with ways that you sin against God, and then ways that you sin against your neighbor. And there's a real kind of social justice vibe to the second woe that is probably being pulled from Isaiah, but also is a reflection of their perspective under the boot of the Greek, well, not even Greek, the Hellenistic empires that are oppressing them. And then it ends with a warning and then an instruction to pass these things on, so later generations have it. And then we have this awesome story. The next book is The Birth of Noah, which is just chapters 106 and 107. And basically...
And Noah was Methuselah's son, right?
Lamech. Or Lamech.
Oh, so there's somebody between them.
Yes, so Methuselah is Noah's grandfather.
Right.
And that's relevant here. So when Noah's born, he's born with white... His body is all white and red.
Oh, okay.
He's got white...
He's a candy cane.
He's got white curly hair, exactly, pepperminty flavor. But when he opens his eyes shone like the sun. And then immediately after being born, he stood up and praised the Lord.
Wow. That's a precocious kid.
Yes. At which point Lamech freaks out. And says,
as you might in that situation.
And basically says, "This ain't my son. This looks like one of the sons of angels." He's afraid that his wife has been knocked up by
he
one of
turns to his wife and is like, yeah. How angelic does the milkman look? Because I don't look like this.
So he goes to Methuselah and is like, "Dad, I don't know what's going on here." And Methuselah goes to Enoch. And Enoch says, no, it's your son.
It's cool, don't worry.
You can see it in the eyes. And Enoch tells him that he's going to survive the flood, but that great evil will return to the earth afterwards.
I like that, they know that the flood is coming. Because it doesn't seem like that was common. In the other things, it doesn't seem like that was common knowledge.
Well, no, God announces it to Noah like shortly beforehand.
Right.
So, yeah.
So A, they know that the flood is coming, and B, they know, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's not like it works. Don't worry.
Yeah. And then the final book of Enoch, which again was probably written around the same time as the New Testament. So this text is kind of coming together cumulatively. It's accreting more and more chapters, but it's still in circulation.
Sure.
As it's accreting these chapters. The final book is a summary, an interpretive conclusion of the whole book. And then it promises this eschaton, the end times, the believers will be delivered, the sinners will be eradicated. And you have a few different perspectives on post-mortem divine punishment. There's some like, oh, they're going to be destroyed as if they never existed. And then you've got, they're going to be punished, and then they're either going to be destroyed or they're going to achieve some kind of salvation, or you've got the idea of eternal conscious torment. So because there are many different people contributing to the book, you've got many different perspectives on post-mortem divine reward and punishment, which then get taken up in the New Testament, and they don't really get systematized until afterwards.
Sorry, one of the things that I'm picking up on here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been doing this show for over a year now, and I have learned a couple things. Not a lot, but I've learned a couple things. And one of the things that I'm picking up on is, though this book purports to have been written from before the flood, it's got a lot of ideas that were very late ideas.
Yeah.
Like all of this eschaton stuff, all of the, like, I remember you talking about those are late BCE ideas, correct?
Yeah. These are conceptual packages that get put together comparatively late. So they're coming Persian period, perhaps influenced by Zoroastrianism. Certainly the afterlife concepts are being influenced by Greek and Roman mythology in the Greco-Roman period. So this is all pretty late stuff. And as you pointed out, if you've got Enoch saying, hey, remember the flood thing that's going to come up? Like, that's very clearly someone writing from the perspective of well after all of that. It's basically assuming the knowledge of someone who is coming after almost the entire Hebrew Bible has already been composed. And so, yeah, it has a bunch of giveaways that it is quite late. And this is what worried some of the early Christians. So again, Jude quotes from First Enoch. We have 11 different manuscripts, fragmentary manuscripts, just shards and fragments, but different manuscripts that were found at Qumran, meaning of all the books of the Bible, the only books that were better represented than the book of Enoch, First Enoch, by the way, would be like Genesis, Deuteronomy, Isaiah, and Psalms.
Oh, wow.
So Isaiah, or First Enoch, is big time at Qumran. It's big time for the early Christians.
And I'm just going to remind people that when we say at Qumran, we're talking Dead Sea Scrolls here.
Dead Sea Scrolls, right. This little outpost northwest shores of the Dead Sea,
right,
where they hid the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so within early Christianity, this is a very influential text. But I think that one of the most pivotal things that happened within early Christianity as it relates to the biblical text is in the 2nd century, you had people who were either raised Christian or converts to Christianity who were embedded in the Greco-Roman intelligentsia. They were part of the elite. They were educated, they were literate, they were familiar with philosophy, and we generally refer to these folks as the apologists because their main project was basically to convince the Greco-Roman intelligentsia that the Christian gospel merited their consideration, merited taking seriously. So they're basically trying to intellectualize, philosophize, systematize the gospel and the scriptures. And they're largely responsible for kind of figuring out where things are going to go with which texts. And probably between the 3rd and the 4th century, you get the, it probably starts in the 2nd century, but in the 3rd and the 4th century, you get these concerns for, hey, this book has a lot of internal contradictions. Like, it tells the same story a bunch of different ways. And they're also concerned for the fact that this book would have had to have survived from before the flood. And that just doesn't pass muster for a lot of them. And so
it could have been on the boat. Why not?
Yeah, as long as we're just ginning up scenarios that are not in evidence, yeah, it could have been.
Noah would want to keep his great-grandpa's writings. It feels that makes sense to me, but
his baby pictures are in there,
right?
Where he's all white and red and looks like a candy king.
It's got that lock of bright white hair or whatever it is.
But they get suspicious about this, and so by the 4th century, most everybody is like, "Yeah, we probably don't need to keep doing this. We can get it." However, when some Syrian missionaries took the Septuagint. So the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Jewish scriptures. And at the time, it wasn't just one volume. It was a bunch of different scrolls. And First Enoch had been translated into Greek, so was a part of this collection. Probably beginning to the middle of the 4th century CE, some Syrian missionaries take Septuagint manuscripts and they go down to what was then known as the Kingdom of Aksum, now Ethiopia. And they bring the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees, a similar production from mainly the middle of the 2nd century BCE. That's riffing on, it's fan fiction of both Genesis and Exodus. But they take those books down there, and Christianity takes root in what we now know as Ethiopia. And so all of the canon debates that are going on up north, in northern Africa, in Syria, in Rome, and everywhere in between, they're having these canon debates, and the Kingdom of Aksum is just happy to keep on doing their thing,
right?
And be left alone. And so the Ethiopian,
they're not sending delegates to the various things or whatever.
Yeah, like they're not at Nicaea and stuff like that. In fact, Nicaea probably happened right around the time those missionaries are first getting down there. But yeah, there's contact back and forth, but for the most part, they're like, we're doing fine all by ourselves. Yeah. And so the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has the most expansive canon within Christendom, and it includes the Book of Enoch. In fact, our earliest copies of the entire Book of Enoch are all in a language that we refer to as Ethiopic, or that we refer to as Ge'ez. Which is, they're both references to different periods of the same language. But these medieval copies of Enoch are our oldest versions of this until, except for a handful of old Greek manuscripts that some of the patristic authors seem to have been aware of, and some Aramaic copies, those that we found at Qumran. Now, the stuff we found at Qumran makes up 1% of, if that, of the entire, all 108 chapters of the Book of Enoch. And just in case you're wondering, it's roughly the same size as the Book of Isaiah. So, the chapters are a lot shorter. I think there are chapters with like 6 verses in the Book of Enoch. But it was largely unknown to the world until 17th, 18th century. We start to have these references bubble to the surface. So Sir Walter Raleigh, you remember that guy.
Brave explorer / pirate or whatever he was.
Yeah. So in 1616, he wrote a history of the world while he was imprisoned in the Tower of London, as one does.
Yeah, sure. And, you got time.
And he told about how Origen and Tertullian, 2 very influential early Christian authors, wrote about the Book of Enoch, which contained the course of the stars, their names and motions. So that's that Book of Luminaries. So he seems to have some knowledge of this, but we don't have anything by Origen that mentions any such thing at all. And then in the 17th century, we have some explorers who come back from Ethiopia saying, "Hey, I saw this weird manuscript down there where they got some stuff that sounds like it might be what Jude was quoting from, or something like that." And then there's a Scottish traveler named James Bruce, came back to Europe in 1773 and had 3 copies of a Ge'ez or Ethiopic version of the Book of Enoch with him. And these 3 copies disagreed quite a bit with each other. So they're pretty late manuscripts. They're not very trustworthy manuscripts. But people start making translations from these. We get a German translation in 1801. And then the first English translation comes out in 1821. And then we get revisions in later years. And then 1838 was when we have the first Ethiopic text of First Enoch that is published in Europe. And it's divided into 105 chapters, and then later on it gets redivided into 108. And then the first critical edition comes out in 1851. So critical edition would be like an academic edition. We're trying to reproduce as accurately as we can what the manuscript says. And then there was a German translation that was released in 1853. And then most people today who go to a bookstore or go online to try and find a version of the Book of Enoch are going to find R.H. Charles's translation, which was originally published in 1906. And then in the early 50s, we have the first Aramaic fragments that were discovered among the Dead Sea Scrolls that were published. And then you can actually see all of those fragments if you go pick up a copy of the, there's a multi-series set called Discoveries in the Judean Desert, which is the critical editions of all the Dead Sea Scrolls. And a 1976 volume edited by Joseph Millick is the one that contains all of the Enoch fragments. And and then we've had a number of other translations have appeared, Hebrew, Italian, Spanish, French, and other languages. And then the 2001 Nicholsberg and Vanderkam Hermeneia commentary, I think, is the most up-to-date. But scholars are still trying to pick apart the significance of all of this. But this was originally written in Aramaic, then translated into Greek, then translated into Ethiopic. And so our best witnesses are in Ethiopic, but we can go back to some Greek fragments that we've got scattered around, as well as these Aramaic fragments to compare what we have. And I think it's just one of the most fascinating kind of mysteries, puzzles that is still being put together by scholars today. And it's one of the most interesting things is it is so significant to the discussion of like early Christology because of the Son of Man character.
Right.
But to like really dig deep into it, you have to learn Ge'ez. You have to learn it's a Semitic language.
Okay.
It's more closely related to like Hebrew and Arabic than it is to Egyptian.
Interesting.
But the script is entirely different. It is a different language. But scholars are trying to learn Ge'ez Ethiopic so that they can delve a little deeper. Now, there's also Slavonic versions of this text that are, another language, another tradition that scholars are also looking at.
What's Slavonic? Where is that?
It is a Slavic language.
Okay.
So Old Church Slavonic is
I was going to guess that, but I
Slavic
didn't.
Language.
I didn't know. Okay. Slavonic.
And so it's this interesting little kind of outlier. It was considered authoritative for a long time among early Jewish folks as well as early Christian folks. It was phenomenally influential. Our concept of Satan, our concept of hell, our concepts of angels, our concepts of so many different things that we find in the New Testament
our concepts of bulls, cows.
Smoothness.
All of these.
It's all deriving in some way or another from this Enochic tradition. It's at least playing a role in how these things are developing. And it was totally unknown to the vast majority of Christendom for 1,700 years.
Wow.
And we're just now getting back to the point where we're taking it seriously and where scholars are digging into it to see what it can tell us about early Judaism as well as early Christianity.
Yeah.
But a caveat, it's not historical. Like,
right.
One of the things I deal with every day on social media are videos from people who are like, they've been hiding the Book of Enoch for us, and now we have all the answers. And it's like aliens visited Earth and
turned people into cows.
And they had spaceships, and they had this and that and the other. And like,
you can't prove that they're wrong.
So now we're back to Russell's Teapot. Why do I always find myself at Russell's Teapot?
It's a useful metaphor.
Yeah, it is. And so it is a fascinating text. It is a weird text.
Yeah.
It is a phenomenally influential text, but it is not a historical text. So for folks who want to go into Enoch, you're going to find a lot of stuff that inspired the discussions that were going on related to eschatology, related to early Christology, related to salvation and damnation and Satan and all these things. It's not about aliens. It's not about spaceships.
It might be about those things. It's just that they never happened.
Oh, and the giants as well.
Yeah,
The Kandahar giant is not real.
How dare you, sir? How dare you? What about Andre the Giant? He was real?
That is a myth. No such person. Carrie Elways was performing against a green screen.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right. It was a blue screen back then.
Because they hadn't discovered the color green yet.
They hadn't figured out green yet.
Yeah. But if you want a wonderful translation, I highly recommend the Hermeneia translation by Nickelsburg and Vanderkam. If you just want to get elbow deep in the scholarship, go get the 2 volumes of the Hermeneia commentary. Be amaze friends and confound enemies at your next party by knowing.
Or do
all
the
about
opposite. You can also confound your friends and amaze your enemies. You can do anything you want.
Yeah, there's a lot of semantic overlap between the concept of amazement and confounding. So
yes, indeed.
We're not here to tell you how to amaze. We're just here to give you the tools and the resources that you can amaze and confound all at the same time. So that's First Enoch.
I think it's so fascinating. I think it's really cool. I think that it's so, because we've had, like, you have referenced it, other guests have referenced it as though, and I've been confused because those references have been as though it were almost treating it as though it's just a book of the Bible.
Yeah,
because influentially, it kind of is. Like, it's source material for a lot of ideas, for a lot of and as you say, like in Jude, apparently, it's treated as scriptural. The author of Jude counts it as part of the canon, as part of the scripture. So
yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah, it's a fascinating text. But please stop pretending it's historical.
I mean, but you could say that about a lot of the canonical books.
Yeah, no, I'm just uniquely frustrated at how much misinformation I have to respond to that is related to the notion that the Book of Enoch is like the secret story that everybody's been hiding from us, and that you suddenly can unlock all the keys to the universe because you have the book.
Well, I mean, I can see where you could come at that, though, if you are to say, that all of the Bible is to be taken literally. If you're a Bible literalist and this book was that influential within, that framework and was touted as actual scripture by the authors of scripture, I can see the argument. It's obviously silly. But I can see it. I can see why they do it. I say if you feel inclined to start conspiracy theories based on this book, get on with your bad self. You're just giving Dan ammunition for fodder for his TikToks.
It's just job security at this point.
That's right. That's right. You should be embracing this, Dan. I don't know why you're fighting it.
I don't know why you did this to me.
All right. Well, I that is fascinating. I really I've enjoyed that. And you and I are going to talk about it a little bit more, and we're going to answer some patrons' questions in our Patreon bonus episode, the after party that we do every week. If you friends at home would like to become a part of that, or just help to make the show go, or get access to an early and ad-free version of every show, you can go to patreon.com/dataoverdogma and then sign up. And if you would like to reach us, contact at dataoverdogmapod.com is the way to do that. And other than that, hey, have a great week.
Bye, everybody.
Data Over Dogma is a member of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. It is a production of Data Over Dogma Media, LLC, copyright 2024, all rights reserved.